Now let's look at a second example of validating configuration changes in Ansible. So I have this playbook, config_2.yaml. Let's look at what we're doing here. So we're going to configure name servers. We're also going to configure a domain name. We're also going to ensure domain lookup is enabled. So at the end of this, we should be able to ping something by its DNS name. We once again check our connectivity, so we make sure that using an Ansible core module, in this case iOS Fax, that we're successfully able to SSH into the Cisco routers defined in the Cisco group. We then make the config changes. The config changes are going to be the DNS changes and the name server changes. And now notice here that I'm doing a list concatenation. I have list 1, which is config_DNS. I have list 2, which is the name servers. I'm making a combined list using list concatenation for my config lines that I'm going to do here. So that will execute those configuration changes. I then need to determine, and this is not in TP servers, but I need to determine which DNS servers are configured, and I do that here, and I register that in this DNS servers variable. And then once again, like in the previous example, I need to process what I get back from that. In this case, I process the DNS servers returned. I do basically the same exact thing I did with the NTP servers. I go and sort of strip out the outer key, the standard out lines. I strip out the list that's wrapped around it. I save that into a variable called DNS servers _proc. So my process DNS servers. I then do the difference operation on what was originally configured, this name servers, versus what is returned. If they're identical, this should be a blank list. If they're not identical, then I should have in this extra DNS servers the DNS servers that I need to remove. And then here, I just print that out, show it to the screen, and then here I print a message saying they're correct when this extra DNS servers is a blank list. And then here you can see exact same pattern that I did with the NTP servers. I remove any DNS servers that shouldn't be there. So if this extra DNS servers has anything in the list, I go ahead and push that change back out to those routers. So that pattern that we see there is pretty much identical to the pattern that we saw with the NTP servers. Now there's some additional things I do here at the end. I'm actually going to ping, so using the iOS command module, I am going to ping google.com. So I'm going to ping something by name. And we know that this means I have to have DNS servers configured, they have to be working, and that IP domain lookup has to be configured. I save this into the output, and then I make sure that I at least have 4 exclamation points in a row. So 4 out of 5, and they have to be 4 consecutively, came back working. So this will appear if this ping was successful. This will appear if the ping failed. So let's go ahead and execute this playbook. So here we're testing our connectivity. We're able to SSH into those devices. We then make our config changes. Now note, this will always show up as being changed. This is an aspect of how the IP domain lookup command is behaving. I think it's mostly an issue with what Cisco does here. We then determine our DNS servers that are configured. So we retrieve what we have there. We set some variables. we actually come back and we don't have any extra DNS servers, so our DNS servers are entirely correct. This debugging messages prints. We then do our ping. We can see that our ping was successful and the ping failed was skipped because our ping was successful. Now, you could have some various things that you want to happen here. You know, when this ping fails right now, it just prints out this message, but you could actually have it fail completely. And there's a couple ways you could accomplish that. So I'll show you the way here at the end. You could actually use this failed when. Now I have a totally different condition, but you could take this failed when that we have here, go back into config2, and basically say some sort of failed when here, and cause it to actually have a failure message. So something of the form similar to this. And you could decide, decide what you want there, but something similar to this, basically, that this last task would actually completely cause my playbook to fail if this condition is true. So in this case, there are not 4 pings that come back consecutively correct. Similarly, we've seen previously how you can use your assert statement to cause failures, so we could potentially do an assert on it. But you can have various things that you could potentially happen when the conditions you specify are, not met. So in this case, this will just cause our playbook to completely